Elena Ceaușescu was the former First Lady of Romania. Her end was broadcast on television to millions of people. She wasn't just the dictator's wife. For 24 years, she made cruel decisions that destroyed lives. She shocked the Queen of England, dreamed of turning her country into North Korea, and lived in luxury while the people starved. But how did an illiterate girl from a village become one of the most hated women in Europe? What terrible things did Elena actually do? And what shocking words did she scream just seconds before her end? Watch this video until the end to learn the truth about the woman who kept millions living in fear for decades. Let's begin. Elena was born in the poorest province of Romania. At the age of 14, she dropped out of school and moved to the capital to live with her older brother. There, she got a job in a semi-legal lab, washing test tubes. Later, this would be turned into a myth about the star of chemistry. At that time, she joined the banned Communist Party, and at a meeting, she met her future husband, Nicolae Ceaușescu. Elena was 23. She was pale, quiet, and not very attractive. He was 2 years younger, stuttered, and had just gotten out of prison. That's how their romance began. By the way, she would later change her birth year to appear younger than her husband. Why do you think she did that? Maybe she had insecurities about her age? Share your opinion in the comments. Nicolae was also born into a poor family, finished only 4 grades of school, and joined the revolutionary movement early. While he kept getting arrested again and again, Elena waited for him. In one of the prisons, Nicolae met a man named Gheorghiu Dej, the future leader of Romania. That became his ticket to power, and by the mid-50s, Ceaușescu became the second most powerful man in the country. Elena was by his side all along, cold, withdrawn, but ambitious. They had 2 children and later adopted 1 more. Once the kids grew up, Elena decided to become a scientist. She enrolled in evening chemistry classes, but she could barely read and write, and eventually she was expelled. Then her powerful husband got her a job as a technician at the Institute of Chemical Research. While the scientists were still in shock that an almost illiterate woman with no education was working with them, Elena was already appointed their director. People laughed at her, but only quietly and behind her back. But her ambition amazed everyone. Keep watching. You'll find out how she shocked the Queen of England so much that Her Majesty had to hide in the bushes, and whether Elena ever got the Nobel Prize she dreamed of. In 1965, after the country's leader died, Nicolae Ceaușescu took his place, and Elena became the First Lady. They moved into the presidential residence and turned it into a real palace, with marble, a pool, a movie theatre, silk wallpaper, and golden faucets. Peacocks walked around the grounds, and a wine cellar was built in the basement. In her closets, the First Lady kept dozens of fur coats, hundreds of pairs of shoes and dresses from top European designers, each of which she wore only once. When meeting with the public, the Ceaușescus tried to look modest. Nicolae had a special worn-out coat just for these occasions. Elena wore strict blouses and grey skirts, like a rural schoolteacher. But behind closed doors, everything was different. Diamonds, necklaces, expensive brooches, and custom-made dresses. But the peak of this absurd luxury was the story of their beloved Labrador, Corbu. A British politician had gifted the puppy to the president, and from that moment on, the dog lived no worse than a government minister. Corbu had his own villa, limousine, and bodyguards. Hard to believe, but he was even given the rank of colonel, and in Bucharest, he only travelled with an escort. But the real turning point in Elena and Nicolae's lives came after their visit to North Korea. They had never seen anything like it. They were welcomed with grand parades, flags, and songs. Portraits of Kim Il-sung were everywhere, complete worship and total personal power. The Ceaușescus returned home fully determined to turn Romania into a second North Korea. But unlike in Pyongyang, where there was one leader, now there would be 2. This was the beginning of an official cult of personality. Portraits of Ceaușescu hung in every institution. and TV news always began with speeches about the genius of the Carpathians. Elena was called the Flame of the Revolution and a Star of Chemistry. No one remembered that both of them had finished only 4 years of school. At first, their rule was seen as a time of growth. Factories were built, furniture, appliances, and shoes were made. Everything went for export. But then the economy started to weaken. There were shortages of raw materials, and debt to international lenders kept growing. The country fell into a financial crisis. Ceaușescu decided to urgently pay off foreign debt and introduced extreme austerity. People received ration cards for food. Heating was turned on for only a few hours a day. Just one light bulb per apartment. Most streetlights didn't work. Cold, hunger, and empty stores. But what was the worst thing? The reason why so many people still hate Elena Ceaușescu. One of the most tragic consequences of their rule was the abortion ban, which many believe was Elena's idea. She thought Romania needed a bigger population to develop its industries. Abortions were banned, birth control disappeared from stores, and divorces became almost impossible. The court fee was more than the average monthly salary. Every woman was required to have at least 4 children. For the 5th child, the government gave a generous reward. For the 10th, women were given the honorary title Mother Heroine and free housing. The results came quickly. The population really did grow, but suffering grew along with it. Women gave birth in freezing hospitals, infant mortality increased, and to keep the numbers looking good, babies were officially registered only after 3 months of life. Because of hunger, many children were left in orphanages, and their numbers kept rising across the country. Ceaușescu continued his reforms, but the situation kept getting worse. He extended the workday and raised the retirement age. That led to miners' protests across the country. Even though the organizers were sent to prison and 3,000 people were fired, the events left a deep impression on the Romanian dictator. After that, he became extremely paranoid. He feared being poisoned or infected. After any handshake, he wiped his hands with alcohol. In hotels abroad, he slept only on bedsheets he brought from home. One time, Nicolae and Elena visited London. The British Queen was shocked by them. Through diplomats, Elena hinted that she would like to receive some academic award. And Nicolae showed up to a royal dinner at Buckingham Palace with a food taster who tested every dish for poison. The royal family was outraged. And the next morning, when the Queen went out for a walk in the garden, she saw the Romanian leader and his wife in the distance. That was the first and only time the Queen ever hid in her own bushes to avoid guests. Still, Elena Ceaușescu was later awarded an honorary doctorate in London. There were even rumours that Nicolae tried to secure a Nobel Prize for his wife through diplomatic pressure, but it didn't work, thanks to the firm stance of Swedish scientists. So how did the Ceaușescu regime fall after 24 years in power? And what shocking words did the First Lady scream seconds before the end? It all started with a protest against the deportation of a Hungarian pastor in a small town on Romania's edge. The authorities responded with violence. The outrage spread to the capital. To calm it down, the regime organized an emergency rally in support of Ceaușescu. People were dragged from schools, hospitals, and government offices to the square, forced to show public support for their leader. But suddenly the crowd began shouting, "Down with him!" and the army refused to obey Ceaușescu's orders. Nicolae and Elena tried to flee but were caught. They were tried at a military base in a rushed court session and sentenced to the highest punishment. When they were brought to the courtyard, Elena screamed, "I am the mother of the nation. I am the mother of the nation," as if that could change anything. Until her final second, she believed people saw her as great. A few minutes later, it was all over. She dreamed of leaving her name in history, and she did. But not as the mother of the nation, as a woman who was hated even more than her dictator husband. What do you think about this woman? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you found it interesting. See you next time.